Welcome to Tremendous's webcast. Today, we're diving into the world of consumer rebates. We just completed a series of experiments, and we're excited to share the results with everybody. Everything you see today should be very practical, actionable advice on how to create a rebates program that actually drives sales. So my name's Ian Floyd. I'm in charge of research and insights at Tremendous. That's a fancy way of saying it's my job to find answers to hard questions that could benefit our clients. And the research we're about to present is a good example of that.
Cool. And hey, everyone, my name is Turney McKee. I'm the Director of Research and Analytics at the Decision Lab, or TDL. We're an applied research and innovation firm that specializes in understanding how folks make decisions and how we can use behavioral science, psychology, and insights from other fields to influence consumer decisions in a productive and helpful way. Both for the purpose of kind of any questions that may arise during the next hour or so, we will have a Q&A at the end, so you can enter them in the chat, and we will systematically go through them at the end of the session.
Cool. So we've got everyone here for the next hour or so. Our goal is to share some interesting data with everyone, but also to have a little bit of fun. Our talk will be lighthearted and conversational. We're giving everyone here $10 for attending live, and 3 lucky winners will get $100 cash. We're also looking for 2 partners to implement our findings and test it in the real world. So we're giving each partner $10,000 to cover the cost of the rebates. And you can indicate your interest in being our partner for this follow-on research by taking the screener survey. There's a link to it at the bottom of every single slide. But let's get started. So retailers, utilities, many other industries in the US spend billions annually on consumer rebates. Yet we realized that the last time anyone did meaningful research on the subject was like 20 plus years ago, which that obviously predates the ways in which rebates have turned digital. We see rebates today in the form of cashback offers, gift cards with purchase promotions, sign-up incentives, etc. And this prompted us to dig into how digital rebates actually affect consumer behavior today. We wanted to understand what constitutes a good rebate program. Is offering money better than a gift card or a product discount? How does how you describe the rebate matter? And how often do consumers actually claim rebates in a digital world? No one seemed to be looking at these questions, and so we partnered with the Decision Lab to find out.
Yeah, and so we've been working with the Tremendous team for the last couple of months doing secondary research. For example, we've analyzed a couple hundred or over 430 specific product-related promotional offers to understand kind of what is happening out there in the real world. And these range from between $1 and to over $2,000 in value. And we've also done some experimental research, primarily in the form of conjoint analysis or discrete choice experiments. Now, at the core, what a DCE is constructing an environment where we force people to make decisions. In our case, individuals are presented with a series of products, each accompanied by a rebate. Now, those rebates are systematically varied. So while the core product may differ, many other details like let's say the value of the rebate, or also maybe the type of incentive that we offer. Is it a cash transfer or a gift card? Also, may be variable. Now, on their own, each of these decisions between option A or option B is not particularly useful. But by analyzing a very large data set of these sorts of decisions, overall, we looked at around 12,000. We can, in effect, build a statistical model of value, the influence that all of these different levers that we can pull has on the propensity of a consumer to choose one option over the other. So think of this as an exercise in quantifying, let's say, the exchange rate between $1 of cash versus $1 of Amazon gift card.
And what we found was that 82% of consumer rebates aren't driving as many sales as they could, which is a huge loss because the right rebate can increase sales by 50% without costing a nickel more. So today we're going to cover why most rebates miss the mark, how to frame rebates so consumers actually want it. We'll ballpark rebate amounts and claim rates, and we'll show you what an optimized rebate program actually looks like. So from our research, we learned that 26 out of every $100 is more or less wasted. But again, don't feel bad. The last time anyone did real research on this, they were talking about mail-in rebates, which means most of us have been flying blind for so long. So how exactly do some rebates miss the mark? A rebate compels purchases more or less, depending on how it's presented or paid out. It's less about how much you're giving someone for a rebate and more about how good of a deal they think that they're getting. This concept is known as perceived value. We discovered that only 74% of dollars spent on rebates actually translate to perceived value. That means more than a quarter of all spend is wasted. And our experiments helped us understand which incentives actually incentivize and which ones don't get the job done. We found that people don't reach for their wallets for rebates offered in the form of mailed checks or store credit. And oftentimes people don't really want gift cards to specific retailers.
Great. And so just to, we picked it off with some semi-specific examples of how rebates can go wrong. And of course, we'll be diving more into the details as we progress through. But we want to, I guess, start by diving into those things that actually do, demonstrate an ability to influence consumers on the basis of our kind of secondary research at what's being done in practice, but also our experimental inquiries into what drives perceived value with consumers. But beforehand, I am going to take this brief opportunity just to reiterate what Ian had mentioned earlier. We'll be going through a lot of experimental data, a lot of analysis of kind of best practices or what is commonly done in the field, but experimental insights can only take us so far. So Decision Lab and Tremendous are very excited to, provide or offer two $10,000 grants to essentially work with, partners that are actually, putting up promotions into the real world to understand whether our experimental insights hold up in practice. If you think your brand or organization would be a good fit, or alternatively, if you're not sure, but are just interested in what we're talking about today and want to get a sense of whether you can be involved, please do check out that link at the bottom of each slide. Our purpose here is to subsidize the cost of your promotional efforts so that we can get interesting and compelling and useful data. And now we'll go back to that data. Right. So we're going to start with the question of framing, or more or less how we're communicating promotional offer to the consumer. Because of course, how we position or how we message matters. I think that makes intuitive sense. So overall, in the context of our experiments, we looked at four kind of, let's say, variables. The verb choice, does somebody receive, does somebody get, does somebody earn something? We looked at how the actual value of the rebate is framed. We're saying you can get $10 off or 10% off. We're looking at the perceived kind of ease of redemption. And this goes back to some of the underlying psychological research. We often modulate how valuable we think something is by how likely we think we are to receive it. So we look to see if whether adding, for example, badges that say, hey, this is actually going to be easy and quick to receive, whether that has an impact on the perceived value of the promotion. And finally, we look at the type of product that we are talking about. Is it a toaster? Is it a TV? Is it a washing machine? Is it a hot tub? Some of these matter and some of them don't. So let's see which one is which. So on the question of verb choice, we actually do not see much of an effect. We tested four different kind of ways to more or less communicate the rebates, and the spirit of them each is captured here. Participants in our experiment could earn, they could get, they could save, and they could receive. Now, we did see some weak trend to suggest that there might be a mild preference for earn, but this did not reach statistical significance. So I think the takeaway here is don't sweat the verbiage. It may matter on the margins, but there may be more important or impactful things for you as a marketer or somebody building promotional programs to focus on. If you want to be safe, maybe use more action-oriented verbs like earn, but nevertheless, this likely isn't going to be the key, the big differentiator. What we did see matter quite a bit was how we're communicating or framing the value of the rebate. So let's consider, let's say $1,000 product being offered or supported by a $100 promotional incentive. If we say, describe that incentive as being $10 off or $100 off versus 10% off, we see a pretty significant drop in the perceived value of the rebate, with consumers exhibiting a very clear preference for the straightforward dollar amount. And this is fairly consistent with past research on the subject from back in the pre-digital era. So here, consumer preference is quite clear. I want to emphasize the dollar amount. it will make your rebate feel more valuable to consumers. And if there's one very small change, doesn't cost you anything. It's more just a question of the language that you use to increase the perceived value of your program. This is likely going to be it. So then we tested, as I mentioned, some language or some verbiage to kind of combat the idea that, hey, rebates can be tricky or maybe a pain in the butt to actually claim and receive. And so we looked at whether simply adding some language that emphasizes, or a little sticker that emphasizes that, hey, this is something that is going to be straightforward or easy to claim, whether that has a material impact on the extent on essentially how a consumer perceives the program, how valuable the consumer perceives the program to be. And when we look at the aggregate population, or everybody all in one bucket, we do not see that this is particularly impactful. But where we do see a key difference start to emerge is if we kind of do some subgroup analysis and start to look at different demographic groups that participate in our experiment. We found that employed adults or full-time employed adults or self-employed adults do seem to extract considerable value from this label. And they're also likely going to be a particularly desirable contingent of folks to appeal towards. They may have slightly more flush wallets. Now, our research does not say why this is the case, but I do think that there's a potentially intuitive explanation, right? You're full-time employed, you may have less free time, and the prospect of putting some of that time into a potentially arduous or troublesome process may not exactly be the most compelling selling point for a promotional program. So I think the trend here that we see is that when folks are time constrained, emphasizing that ease of redemption can, again, without paying a nickel more, add some or kind of relative value or some perceived value to the program as a whole. So if it's easy, make it sound easy. Don't leave people guessing. And now finally, we looked at the type of product, and the two big buckets that we looked at. Well, first we looked at high cost products, maybe like a washing machine or a television, versus low cost products, things like on the scale of a toaster. And then we also looked at the nature of the product. Is this something utilitarian or essential, like a toaster, or something more hedonistic or pleasure oriented, like maybe a TV or a hot tub? And so I don't want to say that the nature of the product doesn't matter. Of course it does. People will perceive different products differently depending on how much they want or need that product. But when we look at the nature of the product or the category of the product and how it affects the perception of the rebate program, we do not really see any evidence that suggests that people will value a rebate differently if it's for a utilitarian or hedonistic product. We do, however, when we look at kind of low cost versus high cost products, we do see that there are differences, namely at the level of kind of incentive type preference. Again, like, is a gift card the right rebate option? We do see that those can be quite variable depending on the cost of the product and the corresponding size of the rebate that is being offered to support it. Now, that's going to be the focus of a lot of this webinar, how some of those differences play out when it comes to type of incentives and which may be perceived as the most valuable. But here, I think the key point is really on the question of utilitarian versus hedonistic. And we don't really see that as being a big moderating variable when it comes to the perceived value of the rebate program.
So what's the right amount to offer for a rebate? We have, unfortunately, everyone's least favorite answer. It depends, right? It depends on your target audience, your industry, product price, the objectives for your incentive program. So before we get into rebate amounts, let's do a quick contest. Type your answer in the chat and we'll give you 60 seconds. The first one to get it right gets $100. What percentage of customers do you think claimed a $5 rebate offer in our experiment? Cool, got some answers rolling in. We're going to do Price is Right rules, where if you come closest without going over, you will be the winner. So
Oh, I feel like that's important to clarify up front.
Yeah. All right. It looks like Colin Stewart, you are the winner. So please, if you could, email us. Let's see. Where are my presentation notes? Cool. So the correct answer is 42. 42%, and we'll get into that number here in a second. But Colin, when you have a chance, please send us an email at marketing@tremendous.com with the subject line rebate the rebates, and we will get you paid today. So let's get into the research. We can't tell you exactly how much to offer as a rebate without knowing about your unique situation, but we can offer a good estimate based off of the best practices in e-commerce. We reviewed 430 discounts and rebates on 21 different e-commerce websites. 30% of the sales price is the most common rebate value, and the majority of those land between the 20 and 40% range. And in 2005, a group of researchers found that the reason rebates still work is because consumers are overly optimistic that they'll redeem the rebate. And that drives them to buy the product. And in reality, many forget to claim the rebate. And so that disparity between intent and follow through tells us that marketers can benefit from this optimism. And for the first time, as far as we can tell, we've proven that that effect holds for digital rebates. The rate at which rebates are claimed is one of the critical variables that affect the overall cost and thus effectiveness of a rebate program. And in spite of its importance, there have been no new public-facing research on the topic in decades. That means if you Google what percentage of my rebates can I expect to be claimed, you'll land on a bunch of resources whose underlying data was collected during the days of mail-in rebates. So we weren't satisfied with that, and so we went to work. But first, another quiz. This one is multiple choice. First correct answer gets $100. What kind of rebates do consumers claim 100% of the time? Digital rebates, rebates over $200, rebates that allow choice in your payout option, or none of the above. Cool. Looks like Luke Yarnton won. So again, please send us an email at marketing@tremendous.com with the rebates as your subject line. The correct answer is D, and we will get into that in a second. So here's how our study went down. We offered 275 of our research participants the chance to claim an extra payment. That's right, cold, hard cash. Each participant was randomly assigned an offer ranging from a measly 50 cents to a whopping $200 paid through Tremendous. To indicate interest, the participants had to provide us with their email address. 3 business days later, they received an email with instructions on how to claim. 85% of people gave an email address indicating that they expect to claim a rebate. 80% of those people who were offered even 50 cents provided an email address, and the vast majority of emails were valid. Only 3 out of 245 gave us a phony email. And so in reality, there's still a sizable delta between those who think they're going to claim a rebate and those who actually do. And so for a rebate of $20 or less, 62% went unclaimed. At a $100 rebate value, 60% of people actually do claim the rebate. And the claim rate never reached 100%. Only 4 out of 5 people offered $200 followed through to get the rebate. All told, in this experiment, we saw claim rates of around 40% for rebates less than $20, a little less than 50% for rebates of $50, and 75% for rebates of $150.
Great. And so now we'll get back to that question of trade-offs and perceived value. And we'll talk a little bit about, beyond the number associated with the rebate, the manner in which that value is delivered and how that affects the way the consumers perceive the attractiveness or the appeal or the value of the actual incentive. But I think the key point here, or the key message we'll be unpacking, is the idea that even when rebates are equal in value, they may not feel equal to consumers. And so I think if I offer you, a $50 Visa prepaid card or a $50 Amazon gift card, you may think that those sound roughly equivalent. But are they? So let's explore. And the survey says picking the wrong incentive type can cost you. So we'll be going through a few case-by-case comparisons and examples. But for high-value products with big dollar rebates, the worst performing yet commonly used option that we see means missing out on up to $130 in perceived value per customer. That's based off of a promotion of between $200 and $300. That's almost half. Now you turn that around and the picture becomes quite clear. You may be paying a lot and not getting so much in value when it comes to the actual way that the consumers perceive your program. If you're not optimizing your rebate schemes, selecting the right incentives, you are not getting the full host of bang for your buck. Now, before we dive into this, or before we go into the actual data, we'll have a little teaser, and this will be our final quiz of the day. And again, the first person to provide the right answer will get a $100. So what is the least valuable incentive to consumers of the following? Cash, checks, store credit, or Amazon gift card? You can record your answer as A, B, C, or D. Okay, so I think the first, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to struggle with your name. Alzbeta? I believe you're our first winner with the correct answer of C, store credit. So please, reach out to marketing at Tremendous with the subject line, rebate the rebates, and we'll ensure that you get paid promptly. But our answer is store credit. Great. And so regardless of the size of the rebate or the price tag of your product, consumers, the recurring theme is that we see that consumers want flexibility. And that means what we observe is a clear preference for cash transfers or prepaid cards. And at certain dollar amounts, people may be comfortable with a gift card, although this is dependent on the value of the rebate. And we'll get into that in a bit. But to keep things simple, let's just start by looking at cash and prepaid cards. And by cash, for purpose of clarity, we're really referring to digital money transfers like Venmo, PayPal, or a bank transfer. Whereas prepaid cards are things like Visa prepaid cards or MasterCard prepaid cards that can be used at many, if not most, retailers. And I think it's not a huge surprise that cash is popular. As a result, we use that as our benchmark. A core assumption of our research is that $40 in cash is worth $40. Here it's $30 and $300 are the two rebate values that we're exploring. But you might be surprised to learn that Visa prepaid card is roughly equal in the eyes of the consumer. We do see a very slight trend that suggests that it may be slightly less valuable. However, this does not reach statistical significance in our analysis. So the safe assumption, within the context of the statistical model, is to assume that in the eyes of the consumer, they're functionally equivalent. And that means that a $40 Visa prepaid card or a $30 Visa prepaid card will be perceived as being equivalent in value to cold hard cash. I think it's consistent with the overarching message that flexibility is crucial. Again, these are both highly liquid. Cash is perfectly liquid and the Visa prepaid card is quite similar. And so by offering these, you can ensure maximal motivation to start spending and ideally on your product. Now, gift cards are a little bit different. For rebates in the $10 to $40 range, let's say you're supporting a product with a suggested retail price of around $100. Consumers view digital merchant gift cards to be on par with cash or Visa prepaid cards, but only in certain circumstances. And again, it goes back to that central theme, flexibility is key. If you offer somebody the option to choose a gift card, for example, like through a platform like Tremendous or something similar, where they know they're getting a gift card, but they can control the retailer to whom or for whom they redeem it, we see that a gift card option is roughly on par with Visa prepaid cards or cash. But if we offer a gift card to a specific retailer, In the context of our experiment, we used an Amazon gift card. And I'll probably flag that that's probably the best case scenario for gift cards. There are very few options that would have that level of freedom or flexibility just due to the size of the product catalog that Amazon offers. We see a statistically significant penalty when it comes to the value that consumers place on those options, which is to say, in plain English, they will value that less. In the context of a $30 rebate, they'll value it about $3 less, which is 10% of the overall value of the incentive gone. But if the rebate is larger, we see a different story start to emerge. So larger purchases generally mean bigger promotions. And that comes back to some of the benchmarking we looked at earlier. 30% of product price is the standard or the most common promotional value that we see. So, but if we look at the range, we may expect that a $1,000 item will be supported by something between $200 to $400. And when we're talking about rebates for products and the accompanying rebates of that size, gift cards take a fairly significant penalty, even if we offer that flexibility. And I think that makes intuitive sense, right? Even in the event that you are provided the opportunity to select a retailer of your choice, $400 may be a lot to spend at a single store. And in some cases, for some people, they may have that big ticket item they're looking at. But many consumers, they may be more interested in essentials or smaller items that they would get at a broader selection of retailers. So what we see in our data is that at low dollar values, gift cards do well, assuming there is sufficient flexibility to allow the consumer to pick the retailer. But at high dollar values, we see that gift cards really fall off, and even ensuring that additional flexibility may not be sufficient to retain the perception of value. Now, what we do see is that at high dollar values, checks start to look pretty good. And I think think of it this way, right? If I give you a check for $10, the cost of going to the bank and redeeming it or even scanning it on your digital banking app may not be worth it. But a check, once you convert it, is functionally just as good as cash. So once we start to think about incentives that are more valuable in that kind of a couple $100 range, that additional effort maybe starts to pale in comparison to the potential upside of actually cashing it in. And so we'll end on store credit. And I'm not going to say never use store credit for promotions, but almost never use store credit for promotions or at the very least rebate programs. So gift cards benefit from convenience. They're easy to redeem, generally easy to claim, and assuming you want something from the right retailer, they're easy to use. And if we add on the additional layer of flexibility in choosing what retailer for the gift card is for, then great, it gets better and better. Checks may be less convenient, but they ultimately turn into cash. So if there's a compelling enough reason, they also do pretty well. But store credit is oftentimes neither convenient nor flexible. If you go use it at a single retailer, or if that retailer, it's kind of the most constrained form of a gift card may not be an unreasonable way to think about it. And consumers value it accordingly. For small incentives, we see that the penalty for store credit is around 30% of the overall value of the incentive. For a sample of incentive or rebates valued at around $300, we see that they lose around $130 in perceived value, which again is almost half of the value of the incentive, just gone. So store credit is unique though. And this goes back to my idea, to my kind of lead on sentence. I'm not going to say never use it, but be careful. Because there may be kind of logic that justifies offering store credit that goes beyond simply driving additional sales. You may be looking to offload inventory, maybe looking to incentivize consumers to spend more time in your store. These intangible benefits are difficult for us to account for in a quantitative or robust way in our experiment and thus our data. And if that's what you're working towards, store credit may still be a reasonable option or the sensible option for you. What we want you to come away with today is just know that from the perception of your consumers, you're taking a big hit on the value of the incentive that you're offering. So ensure that that is something you're comfortable with in the context of your goals for your promotional program.
So to best understand how these concepts tie together, we're going to run through a little bit of a scenario. And by the end of it, you'll see the role that incentive type has on sales. And bear with me, there's a little bit of math here, but I think it'll all make sense. So let's say that you are a large home appliance retailer and you sell espresso machines. They cost $750 per unit, and you sell about 1,000 of them each month. Your goal is to sell more espresso machines. And you know by selling more espresso machines that you will also sell more accessories and consumables like frothing cups and cleaning tablets. So you expect more revenue down the line for every unit sold. So to achieve your goals, you offer a promotion, which is a 30% rebate. That amounts to $225. Your goal is you need to decide what's a better incentive, a cash transfer, Visa prepaid card, or Amazon gift card. And so we can ballpark how sales will increase due to the rebate by using a concept called promotional elasticity. So we're using a promotional elasticity of 2 here. That means for each increase in the rebate value, it should drive sales by 2x that amount. In other words, our 30% rebate should increase sales by 60%. Now, we won't bore you with the technical stuff, but we're happy to nerd out and share the hard science with anyone who has questions after this call. So which incentive should we offer customers for this promotion? Well, let's look at 2 scenarios side by side. If I offer a rebate worth 30% of the product price in cash or Visa prepaid cards, which we're saying are roughly equivalent in terms of perceived value, then my customer perceives it to be worth $225 or 30%. Applying a promotional elasticity of 2, I'm seeing a 60% increase in sales, ultimately driving 600 additional units off the shelves. Now, if I instead offer a rebate worth 30% of the product price in the form of a single merchant gift card, like an Amazon card, that perceived value drops to $191, or only about 25% of the product price. Now, remember what we went over on the last slide. The expected increase in sales is a function of the value of the promotion. So if the rebate feels less valuable, it will convert fewer additional sales. So in our case, that reduction in perceived value translates to 100 fewer espresso machines sold. So cash and Visa prepaid cards drive the greatest overall increase in sales because they are the incentive type that feels most valuable. And Amazon gift cards just aren't as compelling. Now, we layer in claim rates and calculate the total cost of the rebate. So we saw a claim rate for a $225 cash rebate at around 81%. Claim rates for a $191 rebate, and remember that's the perceived value of a $225 Amazon gift card, those claim rates are around 78%. And so if you look at the total cost of both of these programs, a cash incentive would cost you around $290K. An Amazon gift card promotion would cost you less at $263K. And so yes, less overall for your rebate program, but that's only because it's worse at driving sales. You'll give out fewer rebates, so of course it won't cost you as much. But when you break out the costs for each additional unit sold, a new story emerges. For the cash option, you offered 1,600 rebates and paid out about 1,300 of them. So you paid $484 per additional sale. If you used Amazon gift cards, you paid $518 per additional sale. Thus, cash and prepaid cards are a better option for rebates because, again, they drive more sales and at a lower cost per additional sale. So that brings us to the takeaway. A good rebate program can net you 50% more sales with the same budget. The wrong incentive costs you more and generates less sales. And when building a rebate program, remember these 5 things. The average rebate is roughly 30%. Don't sweat the language, but earn might be best. Frame the rebate as dollars off, not percentage off. Delay the rebate a few days, and offer cash or a prepaid card.